The courtroom fell into suffocating silence as the gavel's echo thundered, marking a verdict that shattered expectations. Emma gripped the wooden bench, pulse racing as disbelief spread like fire across the rows of faces. Daniel whispered softly to a grieving woman, "Justice feels hollow tonight," though his voice trembled beneath calm veneer. Alex clenched fists, eyes sharp with restless rage, muttering, "They'll pay for this lie." Michael exhaled slowly, expression unreadable, already calculating consequences. Victor sat composed, a faint smirk curling at the edge of his lips, as if he had orchestrated the collapse of faith in the system. Judge Harris delivered the ruling with grim finality, his voice steady as if untouched by the storm he unleashed. Sarah hovered in the minds of all, a presence unseen yet shaping every heartbeat in the room. Outside, the storm lashed against the courthouse windows, a mirror to the chaos inside. The verdict was spoken, but its shadow was only beginning to spread. The interrogation room hummed with buzzing fluorescent lights, its walls closing in like judgment itself. Emma sat rigid, voice trembling as she whispered details of the night that would never leave her. Emma said, "I saw his face, but no one believes me." Alex leaned against the wall, eyes blazing with fury, muttering, "They're blind because they want to be." Daniel placed a hand on the table, tone soothing, though cracks showed in his calm. Michael stood in the corner, arms folded, silent observer to unraveling truth. Victor's presence lingered in unspoken fear, though he was nowhere to be seen. Outside, rain drummed steadily, the storm a reminder of chaos waiting to break loose. Each word carried weight heavy enough to alter futures. The phone rang deep into the night, its shrill cry cutting through thunder outside. Emma jolted awake, heart pounding as she fumbled to answer. A voice whispered through static, trembling with fear, "It's not over." She froze, unable to breathe as the words sank in. Alex stirred in the adjoining room, sensing danger even in half-sleep. Daniel sat in silence, staring at his phone, knowing more than he admitted. Michael wrote notes in his dimly lit study, strokes deliberate as though preparing for war. Victor stood by a tall window, untouched by storm, watching the world bend to his control. Outside, lightning split the sky, the storm a stage for what was coming. The night had only just begun. Morning broke heavy with grief as the community stirred, news spreading like wildfire through cracked voices and restless whispers. Neighbors clustered on porches, clutching coffee mugs with trembling hands. Emma walked among them, feeling their stares burn through her silence. Alex darted between groups, asking sharp questions ignored by many. Daniel offered calm words, his voice soft but hollow. Michael stood beside the sheriff with expression guarded, keeping order with quiet authority. Victor moved through the crowd like a ghost, every nod calculated. Sarah lingered in photographs taped to shop windows, her missing face haunting every passerby. The air was thick, every silence heavier than words. The courthouse steps loomed under the storm as Emma stood alone, rain soaking her coat, eyes locked on the doors. She whispered, "This isn't justice. This is a sentence." Alex lingered at the base of the steps, defiant, watching her with fiery determination. Daniel approached slowly with umbrella in hand, words of comfort caught in his throat before silence waned off. Michael remained in shadows, watching without moving. Victor emerged briefly, adjusting his tie with gloved hands and gaze sharp as lightning before vanishing again. The storm mirrored turmoil, every raindrop a drumbeat of dread. Sarah lingered unseen but heavy in memory, pulling strings of pain. The community's faith cracked as something darker rushed in. The old park was silent, except for rain dripping from branches as Emma returned to the memorial bench. She touched the sealed letter she carried for years but could never open. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I promised I'd come back." Daniel appeared quietly, his tone soft as he said, "Some wounds never close, but they guide us." Emma stared at the ground, unable to look him in the eye. Alex watched from a distance, restless energy pushing him forward, yet holding him back. Michael stood behind the path, protective but heavy with secrets he refused to share. Victor's influence was unspoken, but felt in every hesitant breath. Sarah lingered in memory, the weight of her absence more present than the living around Emma. The storm had eased, but the grief it left behind clung heavier than rain. Daniel sat in Emma's kitchen, his voice steady as he told her, "People trust you even when you doubt yourself." Emma leaned on the counter, staring at her hands, whispering, "I carry ghosts with me everywhere." Alex barged in, his tone sharp, "Then stop hiding from them." Michael entered silently, placing a cup of coffee on the table without a word, his presence grounding but unreadable. Daniel reached across the table, a hand hovering but never touching Emma's. His kindness was steady, yet shadows in his eyes betrayed compromises unspoken. Victor's absence was intentional, his control thriving in silence. Sarah's face in a photograph on the fridge seemed to watch them all. The air thickened with tension between comfort and truth, every word pushing Emma closer to breaking. Alex stood on the steps of an abandoned building, rain dripping from broken gutters. He shouted at Emma, "You all pretend not to know, but I've seen what hides in this town." Emma tried to steady her voice, replying, "You don't understand the danger." Alex glared, eyes burning. "No, you don't understand the truth." Daniel appeared behind Emma, hands raised as he said softly, "We're all carrying pieces of this." Michael lingered near the street, watching with measured calm, refusing to intervene. Victor's presence pulsed in Alex's words, his hidden influence woven into every accusation. Sarah's absence was the silent wound binding them, every sentence spoken dripping with grief and betrayal. The air hung heavy with defiance, rain falling harder as if echoing Alex's fury. Michael walked beside Emma along the wet streets, their footsteps echoing under flickering lamps. Emma whispered, "You always seem to know more than you say." Michael kept his eyes forward, replying evenly, "Silence is sometimes the only loyalty I can give." Emma stopped, staring at him, searching his face for cracks in his calm. Daniel watched from across the street, his jaw tightening, sensing truths withheld. Alex trailed behind, restless energy brimming as he muttered, "Secrets will bury us." Victor's shadow loomed unspoken, his influence stretching through every hidden silence. Sarah's memory surfaced in the stillness, her favorite song hummed faintly in Emma's mind. The city street felt empty yet crowded with tension, the night itself carrying the weight of what remained unspoken. Victor stood in his study, surrounded by shelves of leather-bound books, his hands folded neatly behind his back. His voice was smooth as he said aloud to no one, "Truth is fragile, and I hold the strings." Emma walked past outside the lit window, unaware she was under his gaze. Daniel sat in his car parked nearby, whispering to himself, "I don't know how long I can shield them." Michael leaned against a wall in the shadows, calm and unreadable, waiting for the moment to act. Alex sketched furiously in a notebook, lines sharp as his anger grew. Sarah's presence lingered in Victor's office, her face hidden in a photograph tucked away in a drawer. The night carried a chill, and with it the promise of more betrayals to come. The evidence room smelled of dust and secrets as Emma opened a box labeled "Long Forgotten." Her breath caught when she found a hidden recording, its tape scrawled with Sarah's name. Emma whispered, "This shouldn't exist." Daniel leaned over her shoulder, his face pale as he muttered, "If this is real, everything changes." Alex grabbed the tape, shaking with anger as he snapped, "They buried this on purpose." Michael stood in the doorway, his voice low, "Careful what you wake up. Some truths destroy." Victor's shadow stretched even here, his presence heavy without being seen. Sarah's voice, faint and distant, echoed from the tape as Emma pressed play, her hands trembling. The room became a prison of revelation, every heart pounding with the weight of betrayal unearthed. Emma paced the church aisle, clutching the recording in her hand. Her voice broke. Why would they hide Sarah's truth? Daniel followed, replying gently, "Because power fears exposure." Alex slammed a pew with his fist, shouting, "They think silence will protect them, but I won't let it." Michael sat quietly in the last row, his expression unreadable as he whispered, "Sometimes silence is survival." The stained glass cast fractured colors across their faces, each shade echoing their conflict. Victor's unseen control hung in the air like incense, impossible to ignore. Emma pressed the tape to her chest, whispering Sarah's name. The church became both sanctuary and battlefield, a sacred space holding poisoned secrets. The rain poured outside as Emma confronted Daniel in her living room. She shouted, "You knew about this, didn't you?" Daniel lowered his eyes, whispering, "I protected you the only way I knew." Alex burst forward, anger raw as he screamed, "Lies are not protection!" Michael stood in the corner, arms folded, his silence louder than words. Daniel's kindness cracked as guilt leaked into his trembling voice. "I chose wrong once. I can't undo it." Emma's hands shook, torn between rage and sorrow, as Sarah's laughter from the recording played faintly in the background. Victor's manipulation spread through them all, invisible but binding. The room pulsed with shattered trust, every heartbeat louder than the storm outside. Michael met Emma in the alley behind the courthouse, the night thick with fog. He said, "You're pushing too far, and that will break us all." Emma stepped closer, whispering, "Maybe breaking is the only way to see the truth." Michael's jaw tightened, silence masking conflict deep inside him. Alex appeared suddenly, his eyes burning as he snapped, "Stop pretending loyalty means safety." Daniel arrived moments later, breathless, his voice pleading, "Please don't tear each other apart." The alley echoed with their words, every shadow a threat, every silence a weapon. Victor's control pressed down like invisible chains, binding them tighter. Sarah's absence hovered, reminding them of what had already been lost. Victor sat in his office, sipping whiskey as news of the uncovered tape reached him. He said softly, "They think they've won a battle, but I own the war." His reflection in the glass revealed a calm predator, waiting. Emma gathered with Daniel, Alex, and Michael in the dim garage, their eyes heavy with fear and resolve. Alex whispered fiercely, "We can't stop now." Daniel nodded reluctantly, "Then we risk everything." Michael's silence stretched before he muttered, "We already have." The storm outside roared like an omen, lightning cracking against the night. Sarah's memory seemed to linger among them, guiding their fragile unity. The stage was set, their paths now tied in defiance against Victor's unseen hand. The witness stepped from the shadows of the town's old library, her face lined by years of silence. She whispered, "I was there when Sarah disappeared." Emma froze, whispering back, "You stayed quiet all this time?" Daniel's voice cracked, "Why would you hide the truth?" The woman's eyes brimmed with guilt as she said, "Because Victor made me." Alex growled, fists clenched, "And you let him take everything from us." Michael stood rigid, his expression darkening as secrets clawed through the air. Emma reached out, her voice trembling. "If Sarah's past was hidden, then what else has been erased?" The storm outside shook the walls, as the woman revealed a truth that reframed every memory. Silence fell heavy, each of them realizing the foundation of their lives had been built on lies. Daniel sat in Emma's living room, hands trembling as he confessed, "I made compromises to protect you." Emma shouted, "Protect me from what?" "From Sarah's truth." Daniel's eyes dropped, shame etched across his face. Alex paced furiously, snapping, "You're no better than Victor." Michael remained calm in the corner, his silence heavy, while Emma's anger cracked into grief. Daniel finally admitted, "Victor gave me a choice once, and I chose survival." Emma's breath caught as she whispered, "So you betrayed us." The revelation hung between them like a blade, tearing their bond. Sarah's voice from the tape filled the room again, her laughter now haunting rather than comforting. Alex stormed into the old railway station, his notebook clutched tight, filled with sketches of faces and maps. He shouted, "This is all connected. Victor has been pulling strings forever." Emma followed, trying to calm him. "Alex, slow down, you're scaring me." Alex's eyes blazed. "No, I'm showing you the truth you've all ignored." Daniel arrived, voice steady but desperate. "You're too young to carry this weight." Alex glared at him, spitting out. "Too young to see betrayal? To feel abandoned?" Michael's voice cut through softly. "He's the only one brave enough to name it." Sarah's absence hung heavy in every echo of the station. Her memory the unseen centerpiece of their fractured trust. Emma sat alone in her late father's study, papers spread across the desk. She whispered, "It's in my blood. I was never meant to escape this." Michael entered quietly, saying, "Family ties can chain or free, depending on how you face them." Emma held up an old birth certificate with trembling hands. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his face pale as he muttered, "You were never supposed to find that." Alex pushed past him, his voice raw. "She deserves to know." Emma's tears fell as she whispered, "Sarah was more than my friend. She was my sister." The revelation shattered her world and reframed every haunting memory. The silence in the room felt like Sarah's voice, echoing from beyond. Victor stood in the courthouse balcony, watching the storm with calm control. He whispered, "The past belongs to me, and so will the future." Emma confronted him, her voice steady but breaking. "You destroyed Sarah's life, and you buried mine." Victor turned slowly, smirk curving as he replied, "Truth is only power if you can wield it." Daniel stood behind Emma, guilt and fear battling in his eyes. Alex shouted from the steps, "Your lies end here." Michael remained silent, calculating every word, his loyalty in question. Victor's shadow loomed over them all, his presence the final wall of control. Sarah's memory surged stronger than ever, her absence now a weapon of truth. The courtroom was packed, the storm raging outside as Judge Harris struck the gavel. Emma stood at the witness stand, her voice shaking. "Sarah was my sister, and Victor buried her truth." Victor's smirk lingered as he replied, "Truth is fragile, and so are you." Daniel leaned forward, eyes pleading, "Please, Emma, don't let him break you again." Alex leapt to his feet, shouting, "She's stronger than you ever imagined." Michael sat motionless, shadows hiding his conflicted gaze. The crowd murmured, the tension suffocating as every secret was dragged into the light. Sarah's name echoed like a ghost through the chamber. The battle for justice had arrived at its boiling point, and no one would leave unscarred. Emma's hands shook as she unfolded the sealed letter at last. She whispered, "Sarah wrote this before she vanished." The courtroom leaned in as she read aloud, Sarah's words carrying love and warning. Daniel covered his face, tears streaking as he muttered, "We failed her." Alex shouted, "No, Victor failed her, and all of you let him." Victor leaned back, his calm cracking as his jaw tightened. Michael's voice rose unexpectedly, "The truth is undeniable now." Gasps filled the air as Emma's final words silenced the room. Sarah's spirit lived in every syllable, exposing wounds too deep to heal. The storm outside clashed with thunder, echoing the shattering of illusions within. Alex slammed his notebook on the table, sketches spilling out. He yelled, "Every lie, every shadow, I've recorded it all." Emma reached for him, saying, "Alex, we'll use this but not destroy ourselves." Daniel's voice broke. "We were blind, and he saw it all along." Michael stepped forward, speaking firmly. "The courage of youth has done what none of us dared." Victor's smirk vanished, his mask slipping as anger flared in his eyes. The judge struck his gavel, demanding order, but the courtroom was already on fire with emotion. Sarah's face appeared in a photograph among Alex's papers, her memory binding them all. The truth could no longer be silenced, no matter the cost. Michael rose slowly, the weight of years pressing on his shoulders. His voice steady, he declared, "I've been silent too long. Victor's lies have poisoned us all." Gasps rippled through the courtroom as Emma's eyes widened, whispering, "You knew." Michael nodded, face hardened. "I knew enough, and I cannot carry it anymore." Daniel whispered brokenly, "Then you're no anchor, you're the one who let us drown." Alex shouted, "At least he's speaking now, unlike the rest of you." Victor leaned forward, snarling, "Betrayal is contagious, and it will consume you." Sarah's name trembled on every lip as Michael's confession shattered the last illusion of safety. The storm outside roared like judgment itself. Victor rose from his seat, fury boiling over as he hissed, "You think this ends me? I built this town on silence." Emma faced him, voice breaking but firm. "No, Victor. You built it on lies, and lies crumble." Daniel stood beside her, guilt and resolve mingling as he said, "We stand together now." Alex shouted, "Your empire dies tonight." Michael stepped forward, his confession a weapon now. "The chains you forged are broken." Judge Harris struck the gavel, his voice booming, "Order!" Thunder cracked overhead, as Sarah's name whispered through the hall, carried by memory. The climax had arrived, a battlefield of words, truth, and shattered power. The verdict arrived like a slow knife, Judge Harris' voice steady as he declared, "Guilty on counts of corruption, but not for Sarah's disappearance." Emma's heart sank, whispering, "Justice isn't whole." Daniel covered his face, muttering, "It's twisted." Alex shouted, "They still don't see." Michael sat stiffly, expression carved in stone, while Victor smirked faintly, his empire cracked but not destroyed. The crowd erupted with divided voices, some cheering, others in outrage. Emma closed her eyes, Sarah's name trembling on her lips. The storm had passed outside, but within the courthouse, the fractures were permanent. Justice had been served, denied, and reshaped all at once. Emma sat alone at the memorial bench, the sealed letter now opened at last. She whispered, "I was too afraid to hear you, Sarah." The words on the page blurred through her tears. Daniel approached slowly, saying, "She trusted you enough to leave this behind." Emma's reply trembled, "Then I failed her." Alex crouched nearby, voice fierce, "You didn't fail. You're the only one still fighting for her." Michael lingered at a distance, his silence an admission of guilt. The morning sun broke through heavy clouds, the storm finally gone. Sarah's voice echoed in memory, no longer a ghost, but a wound that shaped them all. Daniel walked alone down the empty street, his thoughts heavy. He whispered, "I traded loyalty once, and it cost everything." Emma joined him, saying softly, "We carry guilt, but we choose what it makes us." Daniel's eyes glistened as he muttered, "It made me a coward." Alex appeared beside them, his words sharp, "No, it made you human, but humans must face what they break." Michael's voice echoed from behind, calm yet pained, "The truth is never clean." Their footsteps echoed, the silence between words louder than their voices. Sarah's memory lingered, her absence a mirror they could no longer avoid. Victor sat in his mansion's study, surrounded by silence instead of admirers. He stared at a cracked glass of whiskey, muttering, "They think I've fallen, but I remain." Emma entered through the door, uninvited, her voice cold, "You'll never erase Sarah." Victor met her eyes with calm venom, "I don't erase, I rewrite." Michael appeared behind Emma, his silence heavy with betrayal and truth both. Daniel waited outside, leaning on the doorframe, uncertain if loyalty had meaning anymore. Alex shouted from the hall, "You're finished." Victor only smirked faintly, his control shattered but his defiance unbroken. The empire was cracked, but the shadow refused to vanish. The town square was quiet, under fading daylight, as Emma stood before the community. She said, "Justice is not a verdict. It's what we choose to carry forward." Daniel stood beside her, eyes heavy but resolute. Alex raised his notebook, shouting, "We will not forget." Michael looked at the ground, his silence still weighing. Victor watched from a distance, his presence subdued but unrepentant. Sarah's photograph was held high by children in the crowd, her memory no longer just a ghost but a symbol. The square echoed with silence that felt like unity. The community would never be the same, but it was no longer blind. The community gathered in the town square beneath fading daylight, their faces lined with grief and resilience. Emma spoke softly, "We cannot undo what was lost, but we can choose what remains." Daniel stood beside her, whispering, "We must carry her memory as truth." Alex raised his voice, "We are not broken. We are awake now." Michael lingered at the edge of the crowd, his silence a confession without words. Victor stood in the distance, unrepentant, a shadow unwilling to leave. Sarah's photograph was lifted high, her absence uniting strangers into mourners, mourners into survivors. The town was changed forever, rebuilt on scarred ground where silence no longer ruled. Inside his small room, Alex sketched furiously by candlelight, his pencil carving shadows onto paper. He whispered, "I'll keep drawing until they see the truth." Emma entered quietly, watching with heavy heart, saying, "Your fire will keep her alive." Daniel leaned in the doorway, voice low, "Don't let it consume you." Michael's shadow crossed the wall as he muttered, "He's the only one brave enough to name what we fear." Alex slammed his notebook shut, glare unbroken. Sarah's face appeared faintly in his drawings, each line a fragment of memory. The candle flickered, casting light on a new future, built from rage, grief, and fragile hope. Emma returned to the park where the memorial bench waited, the dawn mist clinging to grass. She whispered, "I carried you in silence, Sarah, but now I will carry you in truth." Daniel sat beside her, saying, "You've given her voice back." Michael stood behind them, his expression unreadable, but his presence felt. Alex walked slowly past, his sketchbook clutched tight against his chest. Emma closed her eyes, hearing Sarah's laugh echo in her memory, no longer haunting but guiding. The mist lifted as the sun broke through, painting the sky with fragile light. Grief had not ended, but it had shifted, reshaped into a vow that Sarah's story would never be buried again. Emma opened an old music box in her childhood home, the melody trembling through the air. She whispered, "This was hers. I hear her in every note." Daniel stood close, his eyes glistening as he said, "Sarah's voice is still here." Michael leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his face unreadable, yet softened by the tune. Alex sat on the floor, head bowed, whispering, "She was the only one who ever saw me." The melody filled the room, fragile and haunting, Sarah's presence alive in memory. For the first time, Emma smiled through tears, the music carrying both sorrow and peace. The house felt less empty, the silence replaced by echoes of what was love. Night fell as Emma stood on the courthouse steps, alone in the rain. She whispered, "Justice isn't a verdict, it's a memory we refuse to let die." Daniel's voice echoed faintly from earlier, urging her to hold fast. Alex's fiery words rang in her ears, reminding her not to surrender. Michael's silence weighed heavy, a reminder that truth has its price. Victor's cold gaze haunted her still, unrepentant even in defeat. Sarah's presence wrapped around her like a final embrace, her voice imagined in the rain. "Don't forget me." Emma turned toward the darkness, knowing some wounds never heal. The story closed not with triumph, but with a haunting truth, that justice had been both found and lost.